Okay, so when you hear the name Pythagoras, what's the first thing that pops in your head?
Probably a triangle, right? Some dusty old geometry class.
Exactly, that one formula for right-angle triangles. And look, that theorem is huge, but thinking that's all he was, that's a massive understatement.
It really is. We're talking about a guy born around 570 BC on a Greek island, and he was this philosophical giant, a spiritual leader.
And the head of a super secret community that genuinely believed the whole universe was just built on numbers.
He was part philosopher, part spiritual guru, and honestly, part mathematical rock star.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're going way beyond a squared plus b squared equals c squared today.
Way beyond.
We're getting into the facts of his life, his incredible discoveries in math, and, believe it or not, music. And we have to talk about the strange rules his followers live by.
Including the famous one about a certain vegetable they weren't allowed to touch.
It's an amazing story. It shows you how math and spirituality for them were basically the same thing. They weren't just doing equations, they were trying to find cosmic truth.
And he didn't start that society right away. He was born the son of a merchant, a traveling merchant.
Right, which meant he saw the world. And that early travel was, well, it was everything. He was soaking up all this knowledge from different cultures that you just couldn't get in one place.
Exactly. I mean, the legends say he didn't just travel for fun. He went to Egypt to learn from the priests, maybe even all the way to Babylon to study their astronomy. He was basically grabbing the best ideas from all over the ancient world.
So eventually he settles down in a place called Croton in what's now southern Italy. And this is where he goes from being a traveler to a founder.
And he starts the Pythagorean Society, which you have to understand wasn't just a school. It was more like a religious commune.
A full-fledged commune. I mean, they shared everything, all their possessions. They lived together and followed this really disciplined, simple life. The goal wasn't money, it was wisdom.
And the discipline was intense. For me, the craziest part is the training. New students sometimes had to stay completely silent for years.
Yeah, I've seen sources say up to 5 years. 5 years of silence before you're even allowed to speak to the man himself.
It was all about listening and learning. They thought true understanding came from quiet thinking, not just talking. But what's really revolutionary, especially for back then,
The women.
yes, it was one of the very few places where women were allowed to study philosophy and math right alongside the men.
That is such a big deal. In ancient Greece, which was so patriarchal, to have women as equal members of an intellectual society.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
But everything they learned was kept top secret. They saw it as a sacred knowledge, so it was locked away from the public.
And that secrecy really leads to their biggest idea,
Yeah.
the one that sort of defined them.
The idea that the entire universe, I mean everything, all of reality, is structured completely by numbers and math.
This is so different from how we think about numbers today. For them, numbers weren't just tools to count with. They believed numbers were actual physical things.
Absolutely. They were the building blocks of the cosmos. And they gave every number a special meaning. Like the number 1 was the origin of everything.
And 2 represented duality, balance, the split you need to create something.
Right. And it got into everyday life, too. They said odd numbers were masculine and strong, while even numbers were feminine and receptive.
So for them, doing arithmetic was like a spiritual journey. It was a way to understand the mind of God, basically. They thought you could find inner peace by understanding the number behind every single object.
And that search for cosmic perfection led them to one of their most elegant discoveries.
The connection between math and music.
Exactly. Pythagoras is the one credited with proving that musical harmony is just math. It's all about ratios.
There's that famous story, which might be a legend, but I love it. He's walking past a blacksmith shop.
And he hears the hammers hitting the anvil. And he notices that different hammers make different tones, but they sound good together. Harmonious.
And it clicks. The sound must be related to the size or the weight of the hammer.
So he takes that idea and starts experimenting. He uses strings, like on a lyre, and finds that the pitch is directly connected to the string's length. And the real magic happens with simple whole number ratios.
Like if you take a string, you pluck it, you get a note. Then you press your finger down exactly in the middle and pluck it again.
The ratio is 2 to 1, and what you hear is an octave, a sound our ears just instantly recognize as perfect harmony.
And other simple ratios, like 3 to 2 or 4 to 3, made other sounds that we know are the core of music. This was huge. Before this, music was just emotion, intuition.
And after him, music was a branch of mathematics. You could prove why it sounded good.
So naturally, they took this idea and just ran with it. If numbers control music here on Earth, and numbers control the whole universe.
Then the planets moving in their orbits must also be making a kind of music, a constant silent sound based on their speed and distance.
Which gave us that beautiful, poetic idea they called the music of the spheres.
They literally imagined the cosmos as this giant, perfectly tuned musical instrument playing a silent song for all eternity. It's an incredible thought.
Okay, let's pivot back to what he's most famous for, the theorem, the one we all had to memorize.
Right. For any right-angled triangle, the square of the longest side, the hypotenuse, is exactly equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides.
A squared plus b squared equals c squared.
It's so practical. The classic example, if you have a triangle with short sides of 3 and 4, the long side has to be exactly 5.
And what's important here is that while other cultures, like the Babylonians, knew about these specific relationships,
They had examples of 3, 4, 5 triangles, for sure.
right, but Pythagoras was the one who created a formal proof. He turned it from an observation into a universal law that works for every single right-angled triangle, everywhere.
And that's why it's still so important. Architects use it every day to make sure corners are perfectly square. Engineers, surveyors, they all rely on it. It might be the most useful single piece of math in history.
But their world wasn't just math and physics. It was deeply spiritual. A core belief was what they called the transmigration of souls.
Or what we would call reincarnation.
Yeah. The idea that when you die, your immortal soul moves into a new body. And that body could be another person, or it could be an animal.
And that had huge ethical implications for how they lived. If any animal could have the soul of your late grandmother.
You're going to treat it with respect.
Exactly. It's why they were strict vegetarians.
There's that story about him where he stops a man from beating a dog. He yells at the guy to stop because he said he recognized the voice of a dead friend in the dog's barking.
Wow. Whether it's true or not, it shows how seriously they took this. Their whole life was about purifying the soul for the next life. Daily meditation, self-reflection.
And a very specific diet. Which brings us to the famous and very strange asterisk.
Yes. The beans.
The bean rule.
The Pythagoreans were absolutely forbidden from eating or even touching fava beans. And this wasn't like a friendly suggestion. It was a life or death taboo.
Just seems so random, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next to all this profound math and philosophy, you have this one weird rule about beans. Why?
The real reasons are probably lost to time, but the theories are fascinating. One is that the beans look a bit like human embryos. Another is that they represented the gates of Hades.
Okay.
But the most common theory is that they believed beans contained the breath of life. So touching them could disturb a soul and mess up the whole reincarnation cycle.
It's just such a perfect example of what their society was, this mix of rigorous logic and, well, deep superstition.
And ironically, it was their obsession with mathematical perfection that led to their biggest crisis. Their whole philosophy was built on the idea that everything could be explained with whole numbers or simple fractions. The universe was rational.
But then they tried to use their own famous theorem on the simplest shape you can imagine.
A square. Just a simple square where each side is exactly 1 unit long. They wanted to calculate the length of the diagonal.
So 1 squared plus 1 squared, that's 2. The diagonal is the square root of 2.
And the square root of 2 is a nightmare for them.
Because it's a number that never ends and never repeats. You can't write it as a simple fraction. It's irrational.
Exactly. And this wasn't just a math problem. This was a philosophical disaster. It meant that a perfect, simple shape contained a length that was unknowable by their rules. Their perfect universe was suddenly flawed.
And their reaction tells you everything.
They were horrified. The legend is they tried to keep it a secret. It was a dangerous truth that could unravel everything they believed.
There's even a story, maybe not true, but gets the point across, that the guy who leaked the secret, a member named Hippasus, was taken out on a boat and drowned by the others.
Right. It was a crisis of faith. It forced mathematicians to realize the universe was way more complex than they ever imagined.
And they weren't just looking at squares, they were looking up at the stars too. Pythagoras was one of the first thinkers to argue that the Earth wasn't flat.
He argued it was a sphere.
And he used simple observation. He watched ships sail away and noticed how the hull disappeared first, then the mast. That could only happen on a curved surface.
He also watched lunar eclipses and saw the Earth's shadow on the moon was always a perfect circle. Again, only possible if the Earth is a sphere. He also figured out that the evening star and the morning star were the same object.
Yes.
Venus. So no matter what they were studying, the core idea was the same. The universe is an ordered system, and you can understand it using math.
And that is his real legacy. That idea is the foundation of all modern science. Every scientist and engineer today is working from that basic principle.
But for all their intellectual success, the society itself had a really violent end. As they got more powerful and influential in Croton, their secrecy, well, it made people suspicious.
They made enemies, and eventually a political revolt broke out. An angry mob surrounded the building where they met,
And they set it on fire.
just burned it to the ground. We don't even know for sure what happened to Pythagoras. Some say he died in the fire, others that he escaped.
But the ideas didn't die. The survivors scattered, and they took their secret knowledge with them, making sure it survived for centuries.
He really proved that numbers aren't just for counting. They're the language that unlocks the secrets of the world around us. His mix of math, science, and mystery still shapes how we think today.
So the next time you see a right-angled triangle, just remember it was at the heart of a society that discovered the universe was more complex and mysterious than they could have ever dreamed.
Good luck with your studies.